Welcome to a very special episode of Wednesday Wisdom. I'm going to be telling you about my story called Supermodels, Cancer, and Me, How I Became a Boundary Boss. So, hello and welcome. Say hello when you come in so I know that you're here, so I know that I'm not alone on the interweb. I see lots of people coming on Instagram and lots of people coming on Facebook, and I know it's going to be shared into the Real Love Revolution Facebook group, so we're going to give it a second. I am going to be taking your questions. And hey, you guys, you know what? Sharing is caring is what I'm saying. So share this because this is something that I think everyone needs, obviously, since I'm obsessed with boundaries. Hi, Penny. Hello, Munich is in the house. How you doing, Fabi? We got Marie. We got Karen. Hello, everyone on IG. Give me some hearts and share this with your people. If you have people, all of you have people. It's just a matter of how many people, but I know you do have people. So make sure that you share it. If you're watching this after the fact, not a problem. Just put a replay in the comments wherever you're watching it so that I know to come back and answer your questions later or let you know my 2 cents on whatever it is you're talking about. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I was very hesitant to do this, but a lot of you asked. So I want to start with a question for those of you just joining. How many of you in this crew on any of the places we are right now knew that in my former life, I was a talent agent negotiating contracts for supermodels and celebrities? Just give me a show of hands on the thing. Did you know? Did you not know? All right. Oh, thanks for sharing. You're so nice. I appreciate it. All right. So somebody knew over there. Who else? Who's in no? Because literally for about, I don't even know, the whole beginning of my career as a psychotherapist, I never even put it in my bio. I never even talked about it at all. And so people were like, wait, so there's a gap of like 10 years. What were you doing? And I was like, oh, yeah. And it was interesting. So if we're just going to get into the story, why don't we? Like, I think there was a part of me that was embarrassed, sort of, or I thought that maybe I wouldn't be considered a serious therapist, or I don't know. I thought people would judge me. I don't even know. Some weird imposter syndrome thing. And through all the years that I got into this, I'm going to tell you my story, how I got there, and then how I ended up becoming a psychotherapist and then becoming a female empowerment expert, a boundary expert, a communication expert, right? A love expert, because that's what I've been doing now. So I've been a therapist for 22 years. So that's a long time, people. It's interesting for me to see how many of you knew and how many of you didn't know. Because actually it's at least half and half, which is funny. And you guys are actually people who are in my posse. So it's interesting that you didn't know. So I kind of fell into that business of becoming a talent agent. I was working in another industry that I hated in the garment center. It was very racist and sexist, and I just didn't like it. And one of my friends was working at a talent agency, and she was like, you should totally come work here. And I was like, yeah, with all my experience. And she's like, no, you just have to have a good attitude or whatever. So I somehow got that job. And I eventually became a great talent agent. But I just sort of took a risk because I hated what I was doing so much that I was like, it's definitely got to be better than this, which it definitely was. And as I went up the ladder in that industry, it was sort of the worst combination if you're talking about boundaries, because I grew up in a family where there were like not good effective communication in the family. You were not allowed to be mad. It was kind of a buttoned up family where you could talk about good things, but you couldn't talk about bad things. And you know, I was kind of the hero child and expected to do a lot, and I did do a lot, and to achieve, and perfectionism and all that stuff. So in one way, getting into the world of entertainment, it was like a perfect dysfunctional fit, if we're going to talk about a perfect fit, where It tapped into all of my disease to please, the people-pleasing syndrome, making sure that I could help and add value at every second of life. Then as my career started really taking off, I kept thinking maybe I'd be happier. I kept thinking, like, what was the thing that was going to eventually make me be happier in this business? I mean, I was excited and I was climbing up the ladder and I thought that was great. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. And every next level that I got to, every next famous client, every next supermodel, every next, then I was eventually running a talent agency, because I was like, oh, that's probably it. Once I'm the boss, then it's going to be amazing and I'm going to super love it so much. And then I got there and realized that no, that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I didn't feel the way that I thought I was going to feel. And the bigger my job got and the more money that I made, the more pressure there was to sort of keep up that level of achievement, that level of production, that level of flying all over the place and being with people. But it also required me to be available all the time. So even when you were off, I was never off, right? And you're dealing with an entitled group of people. And listen, I'm not going to badmouth the whole industry, but I mean, I think it's safe to say it's not a hotbed of mental health. Yeah. I mean, can we all agree that entertainment is probably not a hotbed of mental health? Yeah. Well, I can conclusively say it is not. So I got to a point where I knew I had to change what I was doing. I got sick in that process. And I thought maybe I was just exhausted. I didn't know actually what was happening. And I was already kind of planning my escape, but I've been thinking for about 3 years that I needed to get out. And really, once I got into the world of modeling, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely have to get out of here. It was just such a distorted place to like what people cared about, right? I mean, super famous people who have all the money in the world get all these things for free. Like everything was so backwards. And in the beginning, I was determined, like, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to change this toxic business. I'm going to make them not call the models girls. I'm going to leave my mark. And then after a couple of years, I was like, oh, you know, what's actually happening is that this business is changing me. And I got worse and worse and worse in the way of having no boundaries, knowing something was missing, but just not knowing what it was. And I was already in therapy, but I needed to understand more deeply what the problem was. So think about it. What was I doing? Saying yes when I wanted to say no, right? Having no limits. Now, nobody needs to work 24 hours a day. Have you ever worked for someone who thinks they can just text you at 3 a.m. and you have to get the phone? But that's what it was like. But I didn't know how to do that. I only knew how to be a good girl. And let me know in the comments, women here, men too, who was raised to be a good girl? Anybody? Just give me a, yeah, me in the comments, because I feel like a lot of us, and I guess it depends on your age and when you were raised, but I think it's still happening right now, that there is this connection to women being kind and sort of the softer sex. And like, did anyone teach you to draw boundaries, to speak? Yes, everyone's saying yes, it's me. We just don't want there to be conflict. We just don't want there to be a problem. We just don't want anyone to be mad. We just have the disease to please. So for me, it was so brutal being in that industry and having that experience, because as much as I wasn't worried about pleasing the people who I was negotiating a contract with, right? Because I was really good at my job. I knew I would be getting the approval of my client. So that was where my disease to please really was, or my bosses, or the people who owned the agency. But it was a never-ending battle for me to try to just be myself, to try to take care of myself. And I didn't even know. I was living on caffeine, nicotine, adrenaline. That was it. Like, having no health and no balance whatsoever. And maybe, some of you who heard my podcast on this might know this story, but what would sum up my 20s and my lack of boundaries and effective communication is that I was a bridesmaid 8 times. And at least half of those ugly dress experiences, I should definitely have been a hard no for me. But, I felt like it's an honor. How do you say no? Someone thinks that you're close enough to ask you to be in their wedding when I wouldn't even have invited them to a house party if I'd had one. Now, I would never do that now, but this is decades of therapy later, right? And decades of, 22 years of being a psychotherapist in the trenches with my clients later. So now I can be like, no, that wouldn't even make sense. I wouldn't do it. But, how did that leave me, that experience with being a bridesmaid, especially the 4 times I really should have said no? Bitter, resentful, being in Vegas, where you're like sashes that say brides bitches on you know what I mean? You're like, how did I get here? Why didn't I just say no? Spending all this money to own a dress that, P.S., you're not going to wear it again. No matter what bullshit they tell you that you're going to wear that again, you're not going to ever wear it again. I don't care if you dye it, you're never wearing it again. So you get the point. And I know that many of you, this is why you're in my crew, suffer with this same difficulty of being exhausted from overgiving to other people. And then I became a psycho. So I finally got diagnosed. Let's get to the cancer part, shall we? I got diagnosed with cancer. I thought I was just exhausted, right? I was like, oh, I'm just so tired of this life and this business, and I just have to get the hell out of here. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And I actually already had my plan to escape the business. It was already kind of in motion, but I guess all the years of abandoning myself every single day 1,000 times took its toll. And I got diagnosed with cancer. So that is I don't know that's like a full stop experience. If you've ever had a scary diagnosis, no matter what you feel like you have to do, because I was like compulsively compelled to succeed and do all of the things I was doing, but not more than I was compelled to live. I could tell you that much. And apparently the universe had been trying to give me little hints along the way, and I wasn't listening, I guess. So it threw me down a flight of cancer stairs, and that changed everything, because now, and this was before, actually I just met Vic. So I got diagnosed with cancer within 6 months of knowing my husband, whose wife had died of cancer. Like, it's just that's too long to tell you right now on Wednesday Wisdom. But there is a whole other story that makes it so you're like, how could this be happening? How could this happen to one guy twice in his life? Like, oh my God. But that's another story. In the meantime, back to what did I do and how did I change this? And do any of you feel identified with my story? Because I know that you do. Yes, I'm looking, God. Yes. Lord, there's a lot of us, because it isn't just cancer. Listen, as my friend Chris Carr would say, cancer doesn't have to be your shit pickle, but maybe it's a rotten divorce. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was a horrific accident. But some part of this was a profound wake up to say, something in my life needs to change. And through the therapeutic process, I realized, because I was already in therapy at that point, but I realized what I was describing. And then finally, my therapist helped me come to what the deal was. Like, my boundaries sucked. And this was decades ago, you guys. So there wasn't like 47 podcasts. Hello, I didn't even have a cell phone. Like, this was a long time ago, where there was no Google to be like, how will I fix this? It's going to be easy. So you're talking about me and Barnes and Noble sitting on my ass, literally in the self-help section that had about 7 books in it, reading the one book on boundaries. But it was actually a great start for me to change what wasn't working in my life. Suddenly I was like, this has been so confusing. I've worked so hard. Am I not happy? Right? I have all these things that I thought were definitely going to make me happy, and they didn't. So again, as Chris Carr would say, I'm not going to call cancer a gift, because I wouldn't give it to you, but in my life, I wouldn't change it, because that was the pivot moment to create something different and to move towards understanding. So I became thoroughly obsessed with boundary intelligence, boundary literacy, the language of boundaries, because now I quit my job finally, went to NYU, got my master's, became a psychotherapist, and now I'm in the trenches with my clients. And of course, as a therapist, you end up attracting clients who are similar to you or who suffer similarly, right? There's a whole energetic thing. So most of my clients, and they were in the entertainment business because that's where I came from, but were super high functioning or super smart women who were burnt out as hell and who were not happy in their lives and felt guilty about it. Felt like, I have all the things that everybody wants, but why am I not happy? And I feel like a jerk because I'm not happy. So this really got me. I was basically in the trenches and I was seeing all of these parallel processes of these women where they were crushing it professionally, doing amazing, but then couldn't figure it out in their romantic life, let's say. So I had one of my clients who really wanted to get married, but it was almost like she was such a perfectionist and she was so successful in her professional world that she had given up on the love thing because she couldn't figure it out. And it was almost like if she wasn't masterful at something, you know what perfectionism is, right? We only want to do the things we know how to do great, and then we want to not do anything else. So she didn't want to do any of the other things. When we started getting into what was her boundary dysfunction, because when we talk about boundaries, people have a tendency to want to talk about strong and weak boundaries. And that is not the way boundaries are. It is functional and dysfunctional, right? It is boundaries that help you get what you want in life, or boundaries that get in the way because they're disordered of you getting what you want in life. So do you see the difference? Because we have this, there's all these myths out there. And those of you who did the workshop know that there are so many myths about boundaries, that if you have strong boundaries, what do people think of you? Anybody? Any thoughts? A woman who says, you want to say she has strong boundaries. Are we like, yes, can't wait to be like her? Or do we think, oh, she's probably a bitch, probably a drama queen? Are we afraid that if we assert our boundaries, are we afraid of what people are going to think about us? So with this client, after understanding her downloaded boundary blueprint, and part of what I wanted to tell you today in this, you asked me how I became a boundary boss, so I'm telling you, because when you talk, I listen, but also understanding that I took my life experience. I took 2 decades of being in the trenches with clients, and everything that I saw as a problem, like with this client I'm telling you about, people who the world thinks you have it together, but you don't feel like you do because you're doing only the thing you know how to do or whatever, that I would literally take that problem and be like, how can I make this more simple? How can I streamline this so that my clients, how can I turn this into an integration exercise? Or how can I create a meditation that will help this client start to get this information into her unconscious mind as well as her conscious mind? How can I accelerate the process? Because I never believed, even though I've been in therapy for 3 decades, but I want to be. I'm in therapy because I like to be and because I'm a therapist. But my women were so particularly high functioning. I was like, they don't need 3 decades of therapy to figure out this boundary stuff and this communication stuff. So part of what I wanted to share with you today, because I am, enrollment for Boundary Bootcamp 2019 for women is open. And I want to give you an idea of what is on the inside of it. And not necessarily as now it's going to turn into an infomercial, more about how you don't have time, I don't think, if you want this to happen sometime in the next decade, to do it the slow and complicated way, the way that I did it. And lucky for you, you don't have to. Right? You don't have to be a bridesmaid 8 times or get cancer or be held up at gunpoint and all the other things that I've experienced that I poured into this tool. It's a methodology. It's literally a toolkit so that you can go, oh, here's the situation. What do I do with it? So with this client, once we were able to reveal her downloaded boundary blueprint, right? So that's all the unconscious stuff that she learned from her family of origin about the way relationships look. So she had her parents did not have a good relationship, but her father was very successful. So she also internalized how to be successful. And that was how she got his attention. And that is how she got praise from him. But what she saw and what got downloaded was that women needed to be subservient, was that she needed to do what the person she was dating wanted her to do. And the reason her relationships fell apart was because then she ended up she ended up in Bitterland on the martyr train because she was so pissed about always giving it up to this other person. And even though she was so smart, the same way I was smart, I would not have figured it out on my own. I wouldn't have, because no one even told me that it was a thing. I didn't even know that boundaries, effective boundaries, were a thing that I could learn. What we learned from our family of origin and what I learned from mine is that this is the way the world is. They teach us this is how love is. This is how money is. This is how people are. And if we never question it, because you don't realize that what is in your unconscious mind is driving your current behavior right now, especially if you had bad experiences in your childhood. And I'm sorry, who didn't? Can anyone tell me? Did anyone not have bad experiences in their childhood? Of course not. You all did, because our parents are just human beings. And if you're parents, you've already made mistakes. Don't worry. One day you just be sorry for the way you fail your children, just like our parents hopefully are sorry for the ways they failed us, and we move on. Because this is just a never-ending evolving and learning more skills. So anyway, with that woman, that particular client, once she figured out how to keep her boundaries in a relationship, how to actually be seen as herself. Because here's the thing, in real life, she was an assertive, smart, capable human being. And it was almost like when she was in a romantic relationship, she reverted back to like a 50s housewife. That wasn't her. And the truth is, you can only do that for so long, because your real self is going to find a way to come out, even if it's in passive aggressive communication and behavior. So there you go. So that's one of the things that I teach in the course. But something else about the communication itself is that before you can learn how to actually do this, before you can learn how to be healthy in your own life, you need language. You need to understand what isn't healthy. And think about it this way. There are things that are getting in the way of you creating the life that you want. Many of my clients would come to me and be like, I have it all. I feel so guilty that I'm not happy. I feel greedy. I don't feel like anyone wants to hear from me. And it's the same thing with my well-known clients that I've had. They're like, nobody gives a shit about what the hard life of a star, except those people also have personal experiences and have the same exact dysfunction as just regular old normal people who are not famous. And then the added complication of that being famous, where you're doing it in a fishbowl, super not fun. Trust me. People are like, oh, they have it so easy. I'm like, oh my God, they have it not so easy. Trust me, they really don't. So moving into how this shifted for me is making that choice, becoming a boundary boss myself, and then teaching hundreds of women to do it throughout my time with a private practice. I got to a point where I was like, everybody needs this. Everybody needs to learn this. It can't just be people who have enough money to be on retainer for me as like a coach, available at all times or whatever for them, because I'd stopped a regular private practice years ago. But it isn't just for people who are loaded. This should be for anyone. Women in Serbia, women in Croatia are learning. So in Boundary Bootcamp, I've had women from 25 countries learning things that they'd never learn in their culture. And of course, I'm culturally sensitive to the fact that they're living in a totally different reality than anyone who's not living exactly where they're living. But there's still things that you can do to change your own experience internally. So I'm super lit up about what I've been doing and about doing this. And the course itself is basically my entire life experience poured into and distilled down to what you actually need to know. Because you know how some therapists are really into talking about third grade for like 5 years? I was never one of those therapists, and I'm not that person now. Not with what I create, not any of it. Listen, I'm only interested in third grade if what happened in third grade is getting in the way of you creating exactly what you want in your life right now. That's very interesting. So all of this old stuff in the course, the way it's laid out is we do the first 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks is basically historical stuff. We need to go back not because we have nothing else to talk about. We go back because we go back to basically the scene of the crime. We go back to the original, what do I call them? Perpetrator zero, right? Where we learned this stuff. And we don't blame our parents, and we're not making them wrong, and we're not saying that they're terrible humans, because what I find is that people have this major resistance to they don't, now that you're grown up, you don't want to like criticize your parents. But here's the thing. We're not criticizing them. We're just getting real about what you experienced, because if you don't get real about that, you will never figure out this piece. Because that unconscious stuff, as I like to say, it's kind of a gross analogy, but it's like you could clean your house as much as you want, have all the essential oil things going, all of it. It could be totally spick and span. But if there's like a bag of crap or rotting carcass in the basement of your house, is your house going to smell good or funky? It's going to smell funky. This is the same exact thing, where you might be super capable now. And how you'll know if you're having trouble with boundaries, you're drawn to my work, so it makes me think you probably are. But also look at your life. What has been eluding you in your life? What is it that you haven't been able to make happen? Because I guarantee you, just like I realized with my therapy clients, because it didn't matter whether that client was a CFO making all the money in the world, or that client was an incredibly smart stay-at-home mom. They all had the same thing in common. And what was that? That some part of their suffering was connected to having no boundary intelligence, not understanding where to put their formidable brains, because no one told you. So I want you to visualize that this course that I've created is basically me being an unbelievable GPS for you to find your answers. Because listen, I don't have your answers. I give you everything you need, because what is the biggest complaint that clients had is that they didn't have the words. So I created the Boundary Bible, which I don't sell separately, but it is a part of the course that has all the scripts in the world and every situation you could possibly be in, from nosy neighbors to dealing with addicts to dealing with narcissists, like all the things and all the people, because those situations are different. And I also share with you a proactive boundary success plan, like all of this pre-planning, which you can't even do until we're done with the first 3.5 weeks, because it's all that crap that's been stopping you from expressing yourself with transparency and clarity, right? Getting your needs met, even making a simple, telling someone your simple preference. For many people, we feel like, it's fine, I'm easy, but are you, or have you just been habituated to say, no problem, no worries, I'm not fussy? Are you really not? Or is that just what you learned to get by or to get positive approval? Because I can tell you from being in the trenches for 22 years, for most of my clients, that actually wasn't true. That was just, we learned, when we did those, we did the unhealthy boundary styles. And it's like, how many of us were the peacekeeper, the chameleon, the pushover? So those are dysfunctional boundary styles that have you, your top most important thing is to avoid conflict, right? Like, I just don't want there to be a blow up. I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll do more work. I don't want anyone to be mad. And that is unhealthy. And that is high functioning codependency, which of course we also cover in the course, because it's a specific thing. And it's a concept that I created because codependency didn't really do it. And those of you in my crew know this, that, Melody Beatty, Codependent No More, brilliant, so brilliant. That was an original thing when it came out 30 something years ago. But my women who were attracted to my work did not feel identified with that. They were like, I'm not dependent on anyone. Like, I am doing my thing and I'm making money and I'm doing, and I was like, yeah, but you still have these things, those things being overly invested in the feeling states, the decisions, the choices, what that other person is doing. If you're overly invested in that, in the people in your life, that is still codependency and is still causing suffering and still takes bandwidth away from you to be able to literally pour that into yourself. And another part of this having no boundaries is really all about no self-care, no real self-care. Back to back, soul cycle classes, and walking to work in your Louboutins, that doesn't count, right? Because real self-care has to do with learning how to speak up for yourself and be authentic in your life. So all of those things that I experienced brought me to decide to create this course, Boundary Bootcamp. This is the third year that we're doing it. We have tons and tons of women all over the world. Basically, right now, it's working right now in 25 countries for women who are in way more oppressive situations than at least those of you in North America. I can't say where the rest of you are from because you could be from somewhere terrible. And so this is something that I just wanted to share with you because there was a reason behind what I created. And every single thing that I offer in the course is based on my actual experience of 2 decades in the whole entire, just being in the trenches with clients. So I laid out the course, 7 modules. It's an 8-week course. Each module, right? You have a pre-recorded video, and then we do a live that week to answer all of your questions. You have every single week with integration exercise. Every single week you get a new meditation, right? And this is a therapeutically designed meditation. So we're hitting the conscious and the bag of shit in the basement, right? We got to do both at the same time. And these are all the ways that I've come up with that are the fastest ways. So I'm not guessing like, oh, what works? What'll it be? Because I was doing that for 22 years. I know what works. And the only thing that made it into the actual course are the things that work. And because so many of you learn through stories, I created a whole section. There's about 10 different videos that I did, basically real life boundary stories, problems, conflicts. And I tell, client case studies and my own personal stuff and my friends and my family, because I feel like sometimes it's easier to get a concept, especially because some of this stuff is a little bit heady. I've brought it down to earth. I've made it super accessible, but I feel like stories make it even more accessible where you can go, oh, I get it now. I see exactly what that couple was struggling with. And now I understand what the deal is. And I wanted to throw in all the reasons that you might go, no, I don't think so. I wanted to just take them away. So there's a 14-day money back guarantee. If you do the homework and you hand it in and you go, no, nothing changed. I didn't learn one thing. I'll give you back your money because I know that's not going to happen. Right. And I also created a whole bunch of boundaries because I can't stop, won't stop giving you things associated with this because you all want and need different things. So the Boundary Bible is one of them. And then we have the Hello Goodbye Speed Course for those of you who have no idea how to end a conversation or a meeting and then get sucked into more of the same. So it's literally a course I figured out with all kinds of scripts so that you can just stop saying yes to shit you want to say no to, which would be amazing. I've also am giving you a holiday course, how to have the holidays not be dreadful and you not dreading it, because who wants to do that? What other things do I have for you? Hold on. Wow, so many. Boundary Bible, Hello Goodbye Speed Course. Oh, and there's a quick video guide that I also did because not all of you are involved with addicts, but some of you are. So I did one. How do you draw boundaries with addicts, with narcissists, with nosy neighbors, at the office? That's a whole separate thing at the office, because the way that you would do it with a coworker is one way, a boss, right? Someone who has more power over you, that's a different way. How you would do it with a subordinate is a different way. So again, it's understanding who you're talking to, right? That's what we have to, we shift it up when we're figuring out who you're talking to. And then there was another course that I just threw it in called Indecisive No More for those of you who struggle with making a friggin' decision. And the truth is that the course alone, and I'm not just saying this, the truth is that it is worth thousands of dollars. And I'm selling it for $7.97. And you could do a 10-pay plan. Start right now, $97 a month for 10 months. So I'm doing everything in my power to make you be a no-brainer, like an easy yes. And it's only for women, you guys. So I'm sorry if you're on here and you're a guy. But I want you to have the skills and the tools that this course, I promise you, will give you. And you're doing it with an amazing group of women. And you have the support of Team TC. And if you've ever done anything with me, you know that you are in such good hands. And if you decide that you want to pay in full, let's say you're going to do it, you pay in full, you get 2 additional group video Q&A calls with me so that I can help you integrate. But you also are doing weekly calls with me too. So that's on top of the weekly calls. So you guys, listen, I did everything that I could to make it as easy for you to say yes. If you haven't checked it out, please do. It's terricole.com/BB2019. Someone will drop it in there for you. Many of you, and you can also look at the testimonials. There's a whole thing on testimonials. If you're like, what do people really get from this course? How do people's lives really change? Go in there and check it out. Because I don't want it to take you 3 decades. I don't want you. Yes. You know what? Someone just asked if the material will be available. When you join, you have lifetime access to the course materials. So yes, because I do cram a lot in there, and that is so helpful for people to be able to come back. And people do all the time. They come back to it and be like, okay, I'm going to take it from the beginning again. And because every level of your own evolution is creating something else. So when you go back, those questions, your okay and what's not okay list will change. Because that's, in the beginning, we're doing a lot of assessing. Like, what is happening in your life right now? What is not okay with you that you've been so habituated to accept that you really have to think about it? So imagine that the course is 8 weeks of me throwing you down a flight of stairs super gently and not as painfully as cancer. But it could be a full stop for you. That was the profound pivot in my life. Maybe this live will be that for you so that you can end up in the course. And really, who doesn't want to waltz into 2020 being like, bring it, universe, I'm ready. I mean, are you done with the same round robin bullshit that you've been dealing with sometimes for decades? How exhausted do you need to be? I don't want you to have to get an autoimmune disorder like so many of the clients had. By the time they came to see me, they were just fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, because they were forcing themselves to keep going at this breakneck speed. But there was such a lack of satisfaction in doing that. But they didn't know how to stop. They were like, this is just all I know how to do is this go forward. So I want to say thank you for listening to my story. I hope that it inspired you to know that to know that A, it's possible, and B, I really want you to continue this self-help work, this effective communication work, this boundary work, whether it's with me or someone else. Just don't stop, because this is your one and only life. And if you don't do something, who can do it for you? Nobody, right? If not now, when? This is that clients come to me, they wake up in their 60s and they're like, why didn't I do this in my 30s, my 20s, my 40s? Don't be that person. And listen, you can still change then. It's okay. But what I'm saying is if you're in your 20s, you can do it now. So do something for you. And this is something you could do. And there's many other things that you can do, but also this is the only thing that I can vouch for because it's the thing that I created, right? So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going live all week in all the places answering. There's 300 questions that I didn't get to during Boundary Palooza. That's how many people were there asking questions. And so what I wanted to tell you is that I'm going to continue answering all of those questions. So if you asked questions during Boundary Palooza, don't feel bad like I didn't care. I'm not just throwing them out. I'm actually going to answer them. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all the hearts. Thank you for sharing and sharing this with the people in your life, because it might just change their life. I want this to be the pivot moment for you and anyone else, because the healthier we all are, the better this crazy effed up world will be, don't you think? Yes. So I'll see you live somewhere, Insta, Facebook, in the groups, on my biz page. Look for me all this week. The course starts on the 2nd, and we are closing the enrollment doors on the 30th at midnight. Hi, Bri. You're so cute. I love you too. Hi. Thanks for healing. We have so many people still here. It was so much fun. Don't miss enrollment closing. And P.S., it only comes around once a year, just like your birthday. So if you think you want to do it and you have a question, email support@terricole.com. I will answer it personally. terricole.com. Email support@terricole.com. And I'm telling you right now, all week, we're going to be standing by. I'm not doing one other thing but answering questions. I'm so psyched to start this course. 2020 is going to be your best year yet. Let's do it. All right, you guys, thank you for coming. Bye, instant. I'm kissing you goodbye. We're ending now. Goodbye to all of my Facebook fam. I super duper appreciate you being here with me, and I'll see you this week all over the interweb.